And welcome everyone to another episode of Inside CKP. Today I have my lovely guest Kacey Ezell. We're calling this the Welcome Back episode because she is freshly back into the United States from Japan. Before we get started, let's pay the bills. A big thanks to Chris Kennedy Publishing for sponsoring this podcast. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com for all your sci-fi, fantasy, military sci-fi, nonfiction. Just go there for everything. Uh, and don't forget to sign up for the mail list there because if you want to keep up with everything that's coming out in the future, not only that, you get free stuff, you get free books, free short stories if you sign up for the newsletter. Also, if you want to support the show, you can go to Chris Kennedy Patreon and help out there as well. And then, of course, you can buy books and you can get to the Amazon page through Chris Kennedy Publishing, but you can also use this link here to go there. And without further ado, my guest, Kacey Ezell, thank you very
Hi,
much for coming on. I appreciate it.
thank you for having me.
So let's go ahead and pay your bills and tell
Okay.
people where they can find you, all your socials and stuff.
So you can find me in many places. The first is probably my website, which is www.kaceyezell.net. There's the picture of it with the lovely Huey cover art on the front. Um, and from there, it links to all of my books, which are all available for purchase via Amazon, and which there's my Amazon page as well. And you can see there the list of quite the wide variety of titles that I have available. In addition, I also have a Facebook group or a Facebook page, Kacey Ezell, Facebook.com/Kacey Ezell, where I will post new releases and some business related, writing related stuff. And finally, one of the most dynamic places you can find me is on my YouTube channel, which is you can just search Kacey Ezell Writer Life on YouTube, and there's a picture of it there. I have been a little bit remiss in the last 2 weeks. I haven't put up a video since the last time I did my live stream with my mom, because I've had some very wonderful and slightly less wonderful things going on here while I'm visiting my family up in South Dakota. But we are traveling back next week, and I hope to get back into a rhythm of posting once a week and then twice a week, very, very shortly thereafter. So go check those out.
Cool. So, well, tell us a little bit more about your YouTube channel. What kind of videos, what kind of content are you putting up? What are you
Yeah,
doing?
so it's called Kacey Ezell Writer Life, and it's really just exactly that, right? I'm in kind of a unique position. Well, it's not really unique, but I'm in kind of a different position from a lot of authors in that I am in the process of transitioning from a full-time military officer to a mostly full-time writer. I don't. I mean, I'm still having another job, but which I'm very excited about. But the structure of that job and the schedule is such that I will be able to be much closer to a full-time writer in terms of my my writing schedule, my output. At least that's in theory. so, um, but so I kind of wanted to document that transition because everybody that I mentioned is like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And the purpose of the YouTube channel is I really just want to build a community of friends and fans and people who are interested in my work and interested in me and in my life and stuff. It's really just mostly supposed to be a vehicle of connection, because I think that if I learned anything from the past couple of years with the pandemic and everything like that, it's that we as human beings, we need that connection. And if it's suddenly cut off, like for example, by a global pandemic, we really start to crave that. And so I'm just looking for ways to kind of, like I said, create that community and that connection. So
Like Marisa and Melissa say often, they've become feral, and
yeah,
and we need to re-socialize and everything. It's
that's right.
it's it's been nice going back to cons and everything, and
I can't
so
wait, man.
so you were overseas for what, 2, 3?
3 years. Yep,
3 years,
June or from July of 2019 to June of 2022.
And what were the things that you liked about Japan, and fun things you did, and all that
Man,
stuff?
I liked everything about Japan. Japan is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's first of all, it's a beautiful country. It's very mountainous. Obviously it's an island chain along the Ring of Fire in the Pacific, so it's all very volcanically active and stuff. We had earthquakes like on the daily, just little
Really?
shakers. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's gotta be
I
weird.
mean, most of the time you couldn't feel them, of course, but every once in a while, you'd be sitting there on your couch playing video games or whatever, and you'd feel a little shimmy. You'd be like, "Oh, okay, there's
That
that."
would have unnerved me the first couple times for sure.
Yeah, yeah. The worst one was in the middle of the night. We had a pretty good one. It was the epicenter was not super close to where we were living, just outside of Tokyo, but it was like a 6.5. I believe it was out in the ocean, and so we felt it where we were living, and it was in the middle of the night, and it shook sideways, which a lot of them, it felt like, to me at least, that's how they shook. But the shaking didn't wake me up. What woke me up was my phone going, "Earthquake, earthquake."
Oh no. Oh, no.
I wasn't freaking out, but you make me feel like I should.
Yeah, that on top of the actual ground shaking. Yeah, I could see that. It's like a big siren going off,
Yeah, like, oh snap!
Yeah.
Everybody panic!
So what other thing? I mean, what cool? Because I've seen one or two of your videos.
Yeah.
What kind of cool stuff did you
Oh
see?
my gosh, we got to do so much cool stuff. So we went and visited the world famous snow monkeys. I have a video on that that you should definitely check out on my channel if you get a chance. We went to, so I got to fly over Mount Fuji just because of my job quite a few times, and it is absolutely beautiful up there. But we also did a couple of like tours up to the Fuji area. There's a bunch of, like, when we first got there, we went to it has like these caves under Mount Fuji, and they're like packed with snow year round. And the Japanese people that live around there used to use them as like cold storage before refrigeration became super common. And so touring those was really cool. Getting to see like an old, kind of restored Japanese village, kind of like Colonial Williamsburg is for us. They have one of those up there, and that was really neat. We got to see several castles, Japanese castles, that one of which had never been destroyed. It was still all the original material. It had just been maintained in really good condition. That was Matsumoto Castle. Sorry. Musashi Murayama was the town we lived in. But yeah, that was Matsumoto Castle. And it was very cool, very beautiful. And it was really an interesting, for someone interested in military art and science and history like I am, it was an interesting study in like the castle as a weapon system, because that's really what it was. It wasn't like, princesses living there. It was a military fortification that they would utilize for a specific strategic purpose. And I found it really interesting to dig into all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Let's see, what else do we do? We got to ride the bullet train, the Shinkansen. That was really cool. One of the most impactful things that we did was we visited the town of Hiroshima, which, if you're unfamiliar, that was the target of the first combat nuclear weapon in World War II. And so we went to Hiroshima Peace Park, which was right there in the center of the city, very close to Ground Zero where the bomb dropped. And they have a really informative museum there that we walked through and got to see all of that stuff. And the town's beautiful, beautiful city, really great food. But the Peace Park was it was very impactful. It was like, you're stepping onto sacred ground, if that doesn't sound too cheesy. And it was really neat. I was glad I got to take my kids to see that. So
that's cool. That's real cool.
Yeah.
But, and as you know, my brother lives in Okinawa.
I know Oki was one of the places I really wanted to go to, and I never got there because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
so.
well, and to that point, we were supposed to come visit y'all and my brother,
Yep.
but the pandemic squashed that.
Right.
And but now you're back. I don't.
Well, and we're gonna go back in like 5 years, so you guys are invited.
Oh, cool.
Put that on the calendar.
We'll put it in the book. Now you're transitioning back to the States. What's the biggest transitional sticking point that you've noticed?
So excuse me. So this is it's not really a big thing. It's a very small thing, but it's a funny thing. So in Japan, they drive on the left side of the road, which that in and of itself is not super difficult to overcome. You just kind of like have to remind yourself, okay, when I'm making a turn, I'm turning to the right lane, not the left lane. That in and of itself wasn't super hard, but all of the cars are also right-hand drive in Japan, which means that the wipers and the blinker are reversed. So fun fact, your blinker is always going to be closest to the window, the side window that's closest to you, whether you're sitting on the right-hand side of the car or the left-hand side of the car. I can't tell you
confused.
I can't tell you how many times I've tried to signal a turn and my wipers go Well, and the funny thing is that it happened going over there too.
Oh yeah.
So much so that so the base that I lived on was called Yokota, and so we, those of us who live there, we had a nickname for it. It's called the Yokota Wave, when like you're trying to signal your turn, but you accidentally hit your wipers instead.
Yeah.
So both my husband and I, as soon as we got our new car and started driving around, we were doing it all the time. It's like, oh,
that's funny. So did you learn any Japanese while you were there?
Just a very tiny bit. I can. So it's very common in Japan for school children to start learning English at around like first grade. So most of the people that we came into contact with had at least some working knowledge of English. And they love it when you like try to speak Japanese, but they're very kind and like, and the thing about Japanese is it's a very difficult language to learn too, because it's very nuanced. Like the different, I mean, most languages are, right? Pronunciation matters. English is the same way. It's like, what's the difference between there, and there? Well, unless you see it written out, you have to guess it all from context. So it was often a lot easier to make ourselves understood in English than it was to try and speak Japanese. But I did learn a few phrases, like just like, manners, basically. Please and thank you. Good morning, good evening, good night, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Well, my parents, of course, went to visit my brother in Japan, in Okinawa, more than once.
Yeah.
And the way now, my dad's a unique guy. He's strange, but it can be fun. But when he went there, he didn't really do a lot of the touristy stuff. He would get on the public bus and just take the bus all the way around the island and all that stuff. And he learned a few phrases. He didn't learn a lot, but my dad's fairly good with language because he speaks French. He speaks a little bit of Spanish and English, of course. And which is funny because both my parents are fluent French speakers, and I almost flunked it in high school. So, but
that's funny you say that. I have friends. I went through high school in San Antonio, and I had friends that I went to high school with that like their family spoke Spanish at home. They were 100% fluent in Spanish, but it's not the same as like formal school Spanish. And so, they same thing.
Yeah. Well, I can curse and count pretty well.
Super well.
But other than that, and I only know a few curse words, but and my accent's horrible. But other than that, in fact, I was applying to a job in New Orleans one time, and I memorized one phrase just so I could say, I grew up French, but I don't speak it that well, and that was it. I can't even remember the phrase now, but
that's awesome.
And so it's but none of my brothers speak French that well, which I tried doing the Rosetta Stone and learning French and doing all that, but that fell off pretty quick.
Well, back to your brother in Okinawa. Okinawa is even a more interesting case because they speak Japanese there, but they also speak their own Okinawan language,
Mhm.
which it starts with an R, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of it. But it's totally different from Japanese.
Mhm.
And because of the unique history of the island, and so that like complicates matters even further if you end up on Oki.
Oh yeah, yeah. And my sister-in-law is Okinawan and all
Yeah,
that, but her English is perfect. So
sure. Yeah.
and um, and so you're in Japan for 3 years. You can't go to
Mm-hmm.
conventions.
Mm-mm.
Well, I mean, you couldn't go to them anyway because of the pandemic, but
You're right.
you're kind of disjointed from everybody in your writing circles. How did that affect your writing?
Um, it was tough. Yeah, it was tough. I was not prepared for how isolated I was going to feel with not kind of having that regular recharge of creative energy that I get from going to conventions. I think that that's something that your wife and I share.
Hmm.
Is that we go to these conventions and we see these people that we love, and we get very excited and very like charged up on these sort of huge extrovert energy that just flows at those things. And you do things like you sit and have awesome brainstorming sessions that just
Hmm.
light up the creative side of your brain, and you go to panels, and you hear techniques and tips and ideas that just like help you think about story issues and story problems in a new way. And it's very, very good. um you know it's like kind of self-care for the creative side of you. And I was not prepared to miss that for 3 years.
Hmm.
And so I kind of had to find.
So we were talking about your how living in Japan has affected, your writing and the cons and your, being isolated and things like that. So and I get it, and which is I think it was either you or Melissa Altoff that was talking about doing a podcast called the Feral Ladies of CKP or something like that. I don't know which one
That's
of you.
funny. Yeah.
Um, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So
Yeah.
for all the people that don't think women write for CKP, we have a bunch of female writers, and so
Mhm.
I think that would be a good show, just for the ladies to
It'd
come.
be fun for certainly because, well, I mean, Marisa, Melissa, and I,
Hmm.
at the three of us, we're already really good friends, and
Hmm.
so there's always some fun shenanigan dynamics going on there.
Well, we have to throw
We
in
have.
the random lady author in there.
Well, I was going to say, like, Chris has added a lot of ladies lately.
Hmm.
Joe Boone is one of them. JD Blackrose is writing for the Hit World Valkyrie series.
Hmm.
There's a lot. There's a lot of
Jo-
ladies. So.
Joelle Presby is in
Joelle,
there.
yeah, also
There's
writing in that series.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. It's about Valkyries. The majority. Let's plug while we're going along. Casey
Yeah, okay, bud.
is one of the authors of the Valkyrie Initiative that'll be coming out in September, and we're doing videos of all the authors leading up to that. If you haven't seen Casey's up on the YouTube channel, go check it out. Um, and and so all these videos and blog posts are leading up to the release of the Valkyries initiative that happens in September, and then we'll do a live launch. Pretty sure this is how it's going to go. We're going to do a live launch and then do a panel of the participating authors.
Yeah,
That'll happen in September. So
yeah,
um,
yeah. It's very exciting.
yeah. Well, and you had another great idea for the YouTube channel, and I'll let you talk about that one.
Oh man, I really hope we get to do this.
This will be fun. Not all
So
the time because people get hurt, but
so the idea I had was based on a show that I've seen a couple of episodes called Drunken History,
Hmm.
where like celebrities get together and get plastered and then talk about stories from history. And it's predictably hilarious. And so, one of the things that I mentioned that I love about conventions is those random sitting around, hanging out, brainstorming sessions. And I mean, let's be clear, I even though I don't drink, there's plenty of alcohol flowing usually at those brainstorming sessions. And so
you get gassed out on caffeine though.
No, that's true. That's true. I'm usually, slightly vibrating, but I thought it would be really fun to get together like 2 or 3 authors, feed them a couple drinks, and then give them like a plot idea or a story starter and be like, okay, go. And like kind of see how the brainstorming evolves along with the, alcohol consumption. I thought it would be hilarious and super fun. And so I pitched it to you and we decided to call it Intoxicated Ideas.
Yeah, I like that one. And we'd have to make sure that people show up at least 1 drink in. Drink of choice.
Yeah.
One drink in.
Right.
Just so it's like, okay, this is happening. And then
keep
going.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so,
no, I like that.
Come with a buzz.
Yes. Show up halfway in the bag already, and let's have fun.
Well, and I think part of what would be really funny about it would be if you had, quote unquote, your straight man, right? Your non-drinker,
your sober host,
moderator or host. Yeah, your sober host who could do like the John Krasinski from The Office, like, looks at the camera like, what is happening?
I like that one. That's a good one. We're gonna see if we can get that one.
That'd be fun. Yeah. I volunteer as your sober host.
Well, it's your idea, so. I took a look at your Amazon page, and I know you had written a lot, but you have over 50 credits. And not just with CKP, of course. So you write for other publishers. So with that being said, let's talk about some of your series, some of your more recent books, because let's start with your Psych series, because this is your most recent release. Yes. Was this right?
Yes, my most recent release was Skies to Conquer, which is the 3rd book in the Psyche of War trilogy. This is my kind of my baby series. It's my it's a historic, like alternate history with a slight edge of fantasy to it, in that it's war stories about women who have the ability to communicate telepathically with other people and to link other people into essentially a telepathic network. And how would that be utilized in a time of war? So the first one is Minds of Men, and it's kind of my love letter to military aviation history, because it features psychics on board 8th Air Force B-17s in 1943, flying over occupied Europe. And then the second one is The World Asunder, which is it's essentially a Cold War spy thriller. The protagonist of that story is the antagonist of the first story, which is kind of fun. It's set during the opening days of the Berlin airlift, right as the Iron Curtain is coming down. And then the third one is Skies to Conquer, that came out in February, and that is it's a Vietnam War story, where one of the kind of side characters from the first book, she's all grown up now, and her grown son is missing in action in Vietnam, and so she calls in some favors to get put in country so that she can go find him. So
that's cool. I love what if stories. And alternate history is like the biggest kind of what if,
What if? I agree.
Because I watch, comic book movies, sci-fi movies, things like that, and anything to mess with like timey-wiminess and or changing like key like Man in the High Tower, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They tweak these little things in alternate universes to where what if the Germans won, or
Right.
Japan won, and all that. So I love this kind of stuff. And
Yeah. I was going to say, so I'm also involved in another project for Baen Books, which is,
mhm,
another publisher that has actually really close ties to Chris Kennedy Publishing.
mhm,
I think
mhm.
I think we still sell some CKP books on the Baen website,
Oh, really?
but yeah, but one of the projects that I'm working on for Baen is another alternate history that is exactly like that. The first book is already out. It's called The Romanov Rescue, and it postulates, okay, well, what happens if not all of the Romanov children are killed in Ekaterinburg, and what happens if some of them survive, particularly the Grand Duchess Tatiana. What happens if she survives long enough to be rescued by the White Russian forces that were fighting against the Bolsheviks during the Russian Civil War at the time, and they crown her empress, and what happens basically if the Russian Revolution turns out differently, and the Soviet Union never becomes a thing. Imperial Russia, becomes a constitutional monarchy, and how does that change the course of history? And it's a really interesting kind of thought exercise, because what we found is that even if you just change like one little thing, and in this case, the only thing we changed is that a German general turned left on his nightly walk instead of right. What are the logical consequences of that happening? And it really is like this whole butterfly effect, where it's like you change one little thing and everything's different. So, yeah, it's really cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. No. So, as an alternate history author, are you or I mean, did you start out as a huge history buff, or did you come to it through
Mm-hmm.
writing, or?
Well, I mean, both, but yeah, no, I've always been a really interested in history. So actually, it's funny. I was talking to my nephew last night about this. I'm interested in the stories behind the history, right? Like, who were the people who were involved in these world-shaping events? Why them, right? Why was this guy? Why was one random European prince in European prince in Europe, go figure. Why was his assassination enough to kick off the first industrialized war that the world had ever seen? That like literally, completely upended how Western society functions. Why that dude? You know what I mean? And so my mom was a big history buff, and when I was a kid, she would take us. We were a military family, so we moved around a lot. And one of the things that she and my dad both liked to do was to take us to interesting historical sites wherever we lived. So like when we were in San Antonio, we would go and visit the Alamo. When we were in California, we went and saw Sutter's Mill, and, kind of like the whole, went up to Tahoe and saw like where they did the silver mining and stuff up there. We're from South Dakota, and I'm actually out here right now visiting my mom, and there's so many really cool historical sites out here that have like really fascinating impact on the way that the United States, particularly the Western United States, developed, as they have. And so it's interesting to me to find out kind of the root cause of that. Okay, well, why? Why was Custer's last stand such a big deal, because from what I can tell, not a lot of people liked that guy, except the press. The press loved him, and that is fascinating to me too, right? So, yeah, so that was kind of like my hook into history was, what is the stories behind these big events? What are the stories behind these big events? And then, because I'm also, a writer, I'm a fan of fantasy, I'm a fan of science fiction. Just like you, I like to ask the what if. Well, what if that doesn't happen? Yeah. I think my first introduction to alternate history as a genre, as a thing, was oh my gosh, what's the dude's name? He's like the biggest name in alternate history. It was a book called Guns of the South, And it postulated, okay, what happens if a bunch of white supremacists from South Africa come back to the 1860s and give General Lee's Army of Northern Virginia AK-47s at Gettysburg?
wow.
Well, what happens then?
Yeah.
So I'm totally going to kick myself when I resolve this like brain fart of.
Well, yeah, don't ask me because I can't remember unless it's people I know personally. I can't remember an author's name.
No, he's very famous.
Yeah.
Very famous. So, but yeah, I just thought that was such a cool concept of, oh, what if, and because so often history, like I said, it turns on these little tiny things, yeah.
Well, and Eichenberry's new book, The Crossing, where
Fantastic alternate history.
Yeah.
Also by Bain. Yeah.
Yeah. And why modern soldiers go back to the crossing of the Delaware with Washington, and if the cover art alone was pretty cool,
It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so, or like a TV show, like not a great show, but a good concept, Sliders, where they go to all these alternate, and what if you did, and just every episode they just tweak a little something that changes the way the world works, and the Temeraire books and all that's just, but you, although with the Temeraire books you got to keep the entertainment going too. But anyway, the first book was good. So you're a big history buff and you write alternate history. To read your books, do you? I would imagine you don't also have to be a huge history buff. There's enough going on there that.
I mean, I hope not. I hope that I'm a good enough writer to give you the story without you having an extensive background in history.
Yeah.
But I also really like to include little, I don't know, like Easter eggs, I guess, things that students of history, and this is true of my military science fiction too. I like to include little tidbits and details that people who are experts in related fields will get and be like, oh, okay, all right, I see you. Probably my favorite one that I included was in Minds of Men, and so one of the books I read for research was written by a guy named Ari Neve, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. He's a British dude who worked for MI9, which was the section or department, I'm not sure what the correct word is, of the British government that was responsible for retrieving and repatriating their isolated personnel, right? So when Dunkirk happened, there were a fair number of most of, the bulk of the British forces got out, but there were a fair number who were trapped, who were isolated there in occupied Europe. And so MI9 worked with the local resistance groups to set up these escape lines to help facilitate getting these guys out. And then those escape lines were later used to smuggle out downed airmen, like in my story, right? Spoiler alert, that happens. I took some liberties and kind of like, there were multiple of these different paths, different lines, different, networks that could get people out of occupied Europe. One of the liberties that I took was I kind of conglomerated them into one, just for the sake of telling a tighter story. And but one of the details that I added that came straight from this book was the code phrases. So when they would try to rescue airmen by sea, because of course, the British Navy was always a force in the Atlantic. And so one of the possibilities was if they could get off the coast of France and could get out to, away from the coast a certain distance, then Royal Navy ships could pick them up and then they could be repatriated at that point. And one of the ways that they would coordinate this were through coded phrases that they would broadcast, that the BBC would broadcast into Europe, knowing that there were resistance agents and British foreign agents that were hidden there with radio receivers that could, pick up these things. And they were just phrases. But one of the favorite ones that I chose was, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but I have it correctly in my book. It's because I did it verbatim. It's like, it is a good night. It will be a good night in the house of Alphonse. And that meant we're a go for the mission. And the receiving ship is in place. We're ready to pick you up. You just have to get offshore. And so I included that, a sequence in my book where the main character and her group, they're in one of these like hidden places with a British foreign agent, and they're listening to the BBC, trying to listen for this particular phrase that tells them, okay, it's time to go. Let's do this. So
that's cool.
Only someone who had basically read that exact same book would get that, but
it
gave me joy to include it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, not only that, but somebody who is really into history is gonna love that kind of stuff, and somebody who doesn't know what that is might go look it up and say, "Oh, what is this about?"
Right. Yeah.
And so, because I find myself doing that stuff fairly often.
Me too, all the time.
I don't understand most things, but
and I look up people a lot too, like people who are mentioned as historical figures. I'm like, I want to know more about this dude. Like, is he really like they're portraying him in this? For me, a lot of times, it's when I watch like, documentaries or historical biopics or stuff like that.
Yeah. It's like, or is this a real person? Or that's pretty cool. Well, it's like a book, a short story I recently read had a character named Oliver Stone in there, and it was nothing like the real person. He wasn't a movie director or anything like that. And, it's like, oh, I know that, and that's fun,
Yeah.
So speaking of, you mentioned military science fiction. So let's talk about another one of your series, and this one's a little near and dear to my heart because my wife also writes in it.
Yes.
So go ahead and talk about this series.
All right. So this is the kind of the Depic or the Hunter storyline within the larger Four Horsemen universe series. It starts with Assassin, moves on to Hunter, and then the third book in that arc is Ally. And then we also did Negotiation, which is an anthology where we invited other writers to contribute a story set in the Four Horsemen universe featuring, the characters of the hunters of the Depic. So the Depic, if you're not familiar, are an alien race that resemble Earth felines, and they are the galaxy's perfect assassins. And if you've ever had cats, you know why that fits really well. But yeah, that series has been. It's very near and dear to my heart as well. It's been so much fun. So much fun to write with Marisa, who's one of my, OG ride or die co-authors. I love working with your wife. I love it. We have such synergy together. Her creative energy builds my creative energy and vice versa.
She's not watching this. You don't have to be nice.
This is just the honest truth, man. You're married to a very talented woman.
She's all right.
But yeah, I love working with her. I feel like every time I write with her, it elevates my game, and so we, I kind of like tricked her into writing this series with me.
Go into that. Go into that story.
Tell that story. Okay.
I was going to ask you about.
So the origin of the Depic, way back in like 2017, I think, I received an invitation to contribute a short story for the first of what turned out to be a bunch of anthologies set in the Four Horsemen universe, because Mark and Chris were opening up this cool mil sci-fi, mercenary-based mil sci-fi setting that they had created. They were going to open it up to other authors, and they wanted to start with an anthology so they could kind of see, who was interested in writing in it, what kind of storylines they might like to develop, et cetera, et cetera. So they invited me to contribute a story, and a lot of these alien races because the stories are told primarily through the eyes of humans, they look like or resemble animals or creatures that we're familiar with, because that's just how our brain processes it, I guess. And I noticed that they didn't have any cats, and I own cats. I am a, cat pet mom, or whatever the right term is.
Crazy cat.
Crazy cat lady. I mean, I've only got two. Does that make me crazy cat lady?
No, not yet.
Not yet. I need at least one more. But they're super, I like them. I think they're super cool animals. I love how self-sufficient they are, but they're also like little sociopaths, I mean, my one cat, Callie, she would like capture birds and lizards and then bring them into my kitchen, and then proceed to make my kitchen into like her giant torture chamber, where she would just play with them till they died. It was horrible. So, but she was such a sweet, she was super sweet, and animal, but she was also a sociopath. And so I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. And we had always rescued cats. So I wrote this story where it was essentially, the sociopathic cat rescuing a stray human, because I kind of wanted to flip that, the inspiration for the Devon stories.
And so you flipped the cat and human dynamic.
Right. So I tried to kind of, flip the script on the story of a human rescuing a stray cat. And so I have a cat-like, badass alien assassin rescuing a human to be essentially her pet. And Chris and Mark liked the story. They thought it was good. They invited me to write a novel in that universe and offered me a contract for it. And I was already very busy. I had a couple of other works under contract, which, spoiler alert, has not changed. That's just how my writing career is, I guess. So I was like, well, I could probably do this easier if I had some help. So I asked them if it was all right if I brought in a co-author, and Chris was like, yeah, absolutely. As long as you give us a good story. And so what I did, this is where I was kind of sneaky. Because Marisa and I have been writing together since the early 2000s,
and we're going to talk more about that.
Oh, I know we are. I know you like to tell that story too. So Marisa's always been one of my first readers, because I love her writing style. I respect her opinion and her critique. She gives really fantastic insights when she, reads something. So I sent her the story. I was like, hey, let me know what you think of this. And she came back and she was like, Kacey, that's awesome. I love it. Like, what is this? And I was like, well, it's part of this shared world story. And you want to write a novel with me in it? And she was like, oh, yes. So that's how we wrote Assassin, she read my story and liked it. And we talked about the characters and decided how we wanted to go forward from that. And so the four main characters of Assassin are the children of the cat in that first original story, which, by the way, is available for free for people who sign up for my mailing list.
There you go. And I just finished Ally, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I wait for the audiobooks.
Yeah.
I wait for the audio.
The audiobook format.
Yeah. But yeah, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody. But go out, read it, and in fact, I have to finish Negotiation. I haven't finished the anthology yet. So
Negotiations, really, we got some phenomenal stories from our contributors for that one. I was really, really happy with it.
Yeah. All right. So you've already alluded to it. Let's talk about how you and Marisa basically met and became friends and all that good stuff.
So when I was a little kid, my first introduction to science fiction and fantasy was Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern series. And for whatever reason, that series has been of seminal importance within all of my life decisions. Because I wanted to be a pilot because I wanted to fly on the back of a dragon, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to be a writer because I wanted to tell stories like those stories. And
your logo.
So yeah, right. Hence my logo. I mean, there are still people who call me Dragon as a call sign, just because I'm such a nerd about them. But yes. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, this phenomenon arose on the internet of internet-based Pern fan fiction. Now, fan fiction is a very old phenomenon. It's been going on forever. People love these universes and want to write their own stories in them. And there have been fanzines, hard copy fanzines distributed through the mail since like the 60s, maybe even further back than that. But with the rise of the internet, of course, it made the reach much easier, made it much easier to communicate and to publish these fanzines and stuff. So I got involved in a number of fan fiction writing clubs where we would write stories set, with our own characters set in Anne McCaffrey's Pern. And it was through one of those clubs that I first met Marisa, and we first started writing together. And I loved the way that she built her characters. I loved the way that she developed her characters. I loved the storylines and the intrigue that she would come up with, and so we became really good friends, writing about dragons and their riders and the people that support the Pern weir structure within Anne McCaffrey's Pern. And the reason that you're smirking right now is because part of a lot of those stories had romance.
See, Marisa denies this.
In them.
She denies this part, but please continue.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like, humans gonna human, and one of the things humans really like to do is fall in love with each other and have sex with each other, right? It turns out dragons also like to do that. So the mating cycles of dragons figured largely as plot points within some of those stories, and so I know you and my husband Easy both refer to it as Pern porn.
Every chance I get.
But I promise it's not erotica. It's not just porn. It's
Marisa will be in the middle of a panel talking about it, and I'll be in the crowd, unfortunately, and I'll just yell porn in the middle of the crowd, and Nick Steverson will back me up every now and then because they get in arguments about dragons all the time. And
yeah, I know.
It's like my favorite part.
Nick thinks he's like the expert on dragons just because he wrote a couple of them into his salvage books, which are great, by the way. They're great books, and you should definitely go read them. And more power to you, man. More dragons are always a good thing, but
yeah, he likes to give you all a hard
you
time.
You don't touch the mistress. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I love that story because Easy and I both called it that independent of one another. We did not.
I know.
Have a meeting or call each other to say, hey, whenever you get a chance, call it porn. No, we came over independent of one another.
You guys didn't even know each other at the time.
No, we didn't know each other. It's like porn. And plus, it just rolls off the tongue. So.
Yeah, it's that alliteration.
Yeah, and so. Let's continue talking about some of your books because you've had some more books come out from CKP specifically.
Yeah.
And it's these lovely gems here.
Thanks. Yeah, so those are two of the series that I've been privileged to write in within CKP, in addition to the Four Horsemen universe. So Salvage Mother is my my entry into Kevin Steverson's sci-fi universe, the Salvage universe. And that one's kind of a funny story because that one came out of an old novella that I had written kind of when I was really first starting to get into writing professionally. And I wrote this novella. It came in at like 20,000 words. I really liked it. Like there were large chunks of it that I was really happy with, but I didn't know what to do with it. And, I wasn't skilled enough in my craft to kind of develop it further. And so I just put it in a drawer and it just kind of hung out for like 5 years. And then I started reading Kevin's series and I realized that actually this novella could fit really well in there as part of a larger story. And so I reached out to Kevin and said, hey man, I have this thing. I think it would be really easy to adapt to fit in your universe. Would you be interested in co-writing with me and kind of writing the other half of that story? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And so I sent it over to him and I rewrote it because among other things, I had originally written it in first person point of view and I had to change it to third person point of view. One, because it in some ways is more polished for that type of storytelling, but also because that made it consistent with the rest of the books in the series. And it just worked better that way, flowing with Kevin's half of the story and then my half of the story. So it's a really fun, like, don't mess with Mama Bear space adventure, really, is how I would characterize that one. And then the other one that you had on that screen there is Promises, which is my first novella of the two novellas that I've done in the Kane Reardon universe series. It's a spin-off series of the main Kane Reardon saga, which is published by Baen. And this spin-off series is about to be published by Baen as well. And it's called the Lost Soldiers is kind of what we call it. But Promises is the first novella that I did, and that features the character of Mara Lee, call sign Bruce, and she is a helicopter pilot from the 1990s who, crashes and is thought dead, but in fact was kidnapped by aliens. So, and if you haven't read Chuck Gannon's Kane Reardon series, that doesn't make any sense to you, but you should definitely go check that out. So that's the first of two. The other one that I did was called Sundown, and that was in the second season of that series. And that one, the main character of that one is like her best friend and crew chief. So,
so I know as in you and especially throughout CKP, you have a lot of collaboration as far as people, getting together and writing books together. And you've done that. I mean, you've done it several times with Marisa. I think you've done it with other authors. What do you, is there one, do you like collaborations more, or do you like writing by yourself more? Does it depend?
I love collaborating. Like Marisa, I'm an extrovert, so I enjoy the sort of I hate this word, but I use it all the time. Sort of like synergistic energy that happens when you get two creative people together and their ideas start building on one another. So I love that aspect of it. Solo work pays more, and I love that aspect of it.
Doesn't hurt.
Or at least let me just say, solo work you get a larger percentage, which makes sense, right? Because you're splitting the effort. However, depending on whom you're collaborating with, just the fact that you've got someone else's name on it can actually sell a lot more books too. So, there's also that. But yeah, it's I like the freedom of being able to do my own thing and not having to check with another person and kind of being on my own timeline. But there's also something for sure to be said about owing your collaborator, a product. And so that gives you that impetus to, get your butt in the seat, get your fingers on the keyboard and start producing. So they're both good for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed that when Marisa, when she's writing with someone, is encouraged to write more each and every day because you're accountable to someone,
Yeah, and she's on fire right now because she's been sprinting with the boss.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So the two of them are,
Oh, and sprint is the right word.
Maybe maybe I should have been more, I don't know,
aggressive,
directive with her when we wrote together. Our pattern for writing together seems to be, because I don't want to like nag someone, because I hate it when that happens to me, right? So our pattern for writing together seems to be that, like, if we have a 100,000 word novel and we're both expecting to write 50,000 words, I'll write like 35,000, and then Marisa will kick in and she'll write like 50,000 in like 2 weeks, and I'll be like,
know,
okay,
God,
let me finish it up.
Yeah. Well, one thing that she and Chris have been doing is sending each other word counts every day.
Yeah.
And that has definitely like, oh my God, he wrote 5,000 words today. I better get on it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you could do. So let's see. You already talked. How did you? So you told the story about how you drug Marisa kicking and screaming to become an author. And I mean, she didn't fight too much, but how did you become a part of CKP?
So just as I said, I think I had a story out that was published in John Ringo's first Black Tide Rising anthology that they did. It was the cheerleader story. And either Chris or Mark, I'm not sure whom, but one of those two read it and liked it. And so they decided to invite me to the first Four Horsemen Universe anthology based on that story. And so that's how it came about.
Let's see. And so when did you start writing? How did you know you wanted to be a writer? You know, how that?
Well, I've been making up stories since I could talk, which according to my mom was super early. So, my mom has stories of like company coming over and me telling them these wild tales as a 2-year-old about, being married to David Banner, like, the Hulk, and how, he would come home late and I would already be in bed. And I didn't like it when he got in bed with me because his legs were hairy. I mean, like weird, just random 2-year-old babble. But, I've been making up stories all my life. I was always, when I was a little kid, I was always like super bossy. And, I was the one who would organize all the other kids and be like, okay, today we're going to play Star Wars and I'm going to be Princess Leia and you can be Luke and you can be Han. And that's that playground equipment is the Death Star. And I'm going to be locked up in this part and you guys have to come get me. Ready, go. Like, I've always made up stories. I don't know how not to, I guess. And, I first got into writing professionally. My first pro work was in 2010 when I was deployed. Same guy that did the Black Tide Rising stuff, John Ringo. He's a fantastic military science fiction author and a friend of mine. But we had met at a Dragon Con a couple of years previous, and he knew that I wrote. And he had an anthology project that kind of like dropped in his lap because the original author or the original editor passed away. And so Bain asked him to take this project on, and it was called Citizens, and it was an anthology of military science fiction written by military veterans. And they were doing a lot of reprints, from some of the old guys like Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke and, David Drake and stuff like that, which David Drake's not an old guy. He's a great guy. But these were all authors who had served in the military. But John also wanted to include some like newer voices. And so he reached out to me via email and said, hey, do you have anything like this? And I was like, no, but dude, I'm deployed and I have nothing to do. So yeah, give me 24 hours. And so I wrote him a story, which was, it was called Light. And it was included for publication in that volume called Citizens. It's still available from Bain, but that was my first pro sale. And so from then, that's how I got introduced to Bain. John, again, offered me another opportunity when he offered me a spot in his Black Tide Rising series. And from that story, that's how Chris and Mark, got to know me. And I got to know, well, I say that's how they were first exposed to my work, but really the key was they got to know me at these conventions, right? So that kind of, brings it back full circle of how important are these conventions. And, I can say with perfect truthfulness that every writing contract I have ever gotten has been a direct result of my attendance at conventions. Not because I got the contract there, not because I pitched anything there, but because of the networking connections that I made at those events.
Yeah. Oh no, it's very important because Marisa, now that she's more established, walks away with a new project every time she goes to a convention. So
Yep.
And because now I'm more of an introvert, and so I don't love the big huge ones because it's too many people. But like ones like LibertyCon, Fantasy, some of the smaller ones, I enjoy those because you actually get to meet people and
it's a little more intimate.
Yeah, they're not being harassed by 100,000 people, So
right.
I know what you're talking about.
By the way, thank you guys for getting our LibertyCon tickets yesterday. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
So,
Yeah, you got to jump on those
for
things.
the audience. Yeah, I just so the audience knows, we're recording this on the day after LibertyCon tickets went on sale, which coincidentally also happened to be the day of my grandmother's funeral. And then so I knew I was going to be busy with that. So I reached out to, like I said, my OG ride or die, Marisa. I was like, hey, can you please get these for me, and I'll sell you the money. And so
Yeah. But yeah, no, and we're happy to do it as many times as you've put us up in a hotel room. It's
points are amazing.
Let's see. There was something specifically I wanted to. Oh yes. So you talked about riding on deployment. You've been in Japan for 3 years. You're a pilot. You've got a full grown up important job. How do you get, and you're fairly prolific in your writing. How do you fit it all? What is your process for writing and work and schedule and all that stuff?
So it's actually evolving quite a bit. A couple of years ago, I would tell you that like I try to write every day at least 100 words a day, and that worked for a while for me. But I also kind of started to burn out, especially when combining writing full time with like really it's moving, right, and other life stressors and stuff. So right now, what it looks like is that I have writing days and I have other things days. And those other things can be flying. They can be, funerals. They can be family events or whatever. But what works for me is to sit down and kind of schedule it out on, I'm a big like planner nerd. I have like a bunch of paper planners, and one of my planners I use for plotting out my writing time. And I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, these are the days that I'm going to write. That I know that, I'm going to have some other thing that's going to take all my energy, whether it be flying or, appointments or whatever else. And then I use that formula. I take those days, look at the number of words that I'm trying to create during that time frame, usually a month. I do this at about month chunks. And then I say, okay, based on that, if in order to meet this word count goal, I have to have X amount of words on those writing days. It's a system that I got from author Sarah Cannon, who's here on YouTube. She's got 2 channels. Her Heart Breathing's channel is like, kind of writer productivity and stuff. And I absolutely love her. And I talk about her every chance I get. I kind of got that method from her. And right now that's really what's working for me is to be very realistic with my time and truth be told, my energy. Now that's true for this season of life when I don't really have a home because my house is still being built. I'm visiting family that I haven't seen in 3 years. There's all kinds of these other big events happening. I anticipate and fervently hope that once, I get moved into my new house, that we get settled into, a more established routine, that I'll be much more consistent in which days are my writing days and which days are not. But right now it's been a little sparse, and that's okay, because these other things are important to do too.
Yeah. Well, and you're in a transition period. So,
right.
So and you talk a lot about this on your YouTube channel, right? Where the scheduling.
Because it's my life, right? Writer life. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more like a vlog kind of channel.
Yeah, I do have some kind of vlog style videos. I have a bunch of like really cool footage I've shot up here in the Black Hills that I just haven't had a chance to sit down and edit together. So hopefully I'll have some cool vlog videos to throw up at some point.
All right, people, you heard that. Pay attention to our channel and go subscribe so you don't miss anything. What can we expect from stories that you've written? People who are watching this in the future that haven't read your books yet. What can we expect from what you've written, what you plan to write? What kind of stories do you tell? We've kind of covered some of that, but
I tell stories that I'm just gonna be upfront about it. I try to make you cry, right? I want to engage your emotions as a reader. I want to give you characters that you can empathize with, that you can sympathize with, that you can identify with. And then I want to put them through situations that cause you as the reader to feel the emotions that they're going through. If I've done that, then I've done my job.
So, on that note, what can do we have any plans for
Yeah.
books that might be coming out that you can talk about?
Sure. Yeah. So my next release will be part of the Valkyries initiative. It's a short story, but it's a long short story. I actually went over my word count for this one.
You stretched the limits there.
I did, man. I was like, Marisa, I love you. I don't want to cut it. And she was like, okay, this is your one, you know? But yeah, so I have a long short story in the Valkyries initiative that's kind of like it's kind of my take on almost like a buddy cop, but one, they're not cops, and two, you know, it's a bestie story, right? It's like two girls just, you know, being best friends and deciding that they're there for each other, essentially, and that they can trust each other. And I loved it. I loved writing it. So that one comes out September 16th as part of the Valkyries Initiative anthology. After that, I'm not sure what my next release is going to be after that. Currently, I'm working on finishing up still the space opera project, the first book in a new universe that I'm creating. Once I finish that, we're going to go back and probably write the sequel with a co-author who I have not yet announced, but it's very exciting. And I think everyone's very excited about it. Yeah. So we're going to go back and write the prequel to that one. And then we'll write the third book in the trilogy, and we won't be actually releasing them until we have at least the first three done, so that we can kind of utilize a little bit of a rapid release strategy to really build some buzz and hopefully create a big, you know, good fan community behind this universe before we potentially open it up to other writers. So that's kind of the buzz as far as CKP is concerned. I'm also currently working on the Bane side of the house. I'm working on the sequel to the Romanov Rescue, which is tentatively titled, well, it was tentatively titled The Winner of Sapphire and Steel, but Tony Weisskopf said that's a little bit too long for the typeface. So I think now we're calling it Sapphire and Iron, maybe. I'm not sure. But I think that's what we're going with now. So, but that continues the story of the surviving Grand Duchesses, one of whom is now Empress Tatiana, and her sisters, Maria and Anastasia Romanov. So, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about your writing and everything. Are there any books or anything that you've read that you recently that you're excited about and that you would recommend to people?
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. A lot of them. Well, so let me put it this way. If you're at all connected with CKP, if you like really just like entertaining stories, really good stories, whether they be science fiction or fantasy or whatever, join my newsletter, and because I send you a new release recommendation every week.
Cool.
And a lot of times there's CKP, you know, releases. Sometimes they're Bane releases. Sometimes they're other releases that I, you know, of people that I know or whatever. But they're always really, really good books. So yeah, so you can go check that out.
Yeah, and don't forget you get free books too, because
you
do promotions and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and free stories. Just for signing up, you get a copy of Wicked Angel, which is a short story set in my Psyche War universe in World War I.
Cool.
In a lovely little garden spot known as Passchendaele or Ypres. That was sarcastic. It wasn't lovely. So you get Wicked Angel. You get a copy of Gilded Cage, which is the first epic story that I ever wrote, the one that kind of started off the whole arc and introduced the species to the Four Horsemen universe. And then you also get I believe I've got it set up where you can get a free copy of my story, Unintended Consequences, which is it's a straight up mill sci-fi story. That it's about what the title says it is, unintended consequences. So
Very cool. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll get lots of good stuff.
you'll get good stuff.
And that goes for any authors that you like. If you want to keep up with what they're doing and future projects and everything, or just to get to know them better, sign up for their newsletters.
Yeah, exactly. Get to know us.
Yeah.
Find out what makes us tick. Why do we write the stories that we write? You get all that information in the newsletters.
Yeah, and same thing for CKP as a broader, broader topics. You'll keep up on all the goings ons within CKP. What's out, what's coming out, more free stuff. So go check out and support your authors. So
and one other thing, if you join the CKP newsletter, Chris's newsletter. A lot of people don't know this, but Chris sends out every new release to a launch team of readers, where you get a free copy of the book, like an e-arc of the book, and you read it, and then you write a review on Amazon saying that you're giving an honest review in exchange for a copy of the book, and you get it before anyone else does. And the way that you get hooked up on that launch team is by joining the newsletter. And Chris will send out periodically. He'll say, I need launch team readers for this series or for that series. And he'll tell you how to apply. You can apply and be part of something really cool.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad you said that, because I don't think I didn't realize that's who his readers were. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So one of the last things that you asked, so you write, you work, you have family, all that stuff. What do you do outside of all that, for fun, hobbies? Well, I mean, you get to fly, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I get to write. Writing started off as a hobby, right? So there's still a little bit of a recreational aspect to it, but I don't know. I sleep. I play video games with my family. I like to go on vacation.
Yeah, you do.
Going on vacation is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, I've been privy to those. I've been honored to take place in some of those. That's been fun.
Yeah.
As we try to socialize ourselves again and become less feral, where can people see you coming up, conventions or appearances or anything like that?
So my first convention back will be Dragon Con in Atlanta on Labor Day weekend. Very excited about that. And then following that, in October, I will be at Factory Con in Coinjock, North Carolina, which is, a small, very informal gathering of Chris Kennedy publishing authors, editors, fans, art. I think we've got some artists. But yeah, it's very, very much a relaxed con. And then in November, I will be participating in 20 Books to 50K in Las Vegas, which is it's a big industry. It's more like, it's not so much a fan convention. It's more like a writer symposium. And then into the new year, I will be appearing. I will be a special guest at MarsCon in Virginia Beach area, and then also I will be at Fantasy in the Durham, North Carolina area in March. So
cool.
And then LibertyCon next year, thanks to Jeremy and Marisa.
Yeah, and of course you can see her all the time on her YouTube channel, and of course you sign up for a newsletter. And before we leave, I want to put out plugs for next week. We're going to have another video in the Valkyries Initiative series. It's going to be Melissa Althoff for that one, and that'll be next, not this Wednesday. When does this come out? Okay, so not today when this comes out, but the following Wednesday.
Wednesday, right?
Yeah, and next Wednesday, we will be bringing back Mike Wyatt Jr. For his new release, and talking about that. Come get to know him. If you haven't seen him before, and if you haven't seen him before, go back to his previous video and check out what he said. You can catch us on things that we repeat, and it'll be a fun drinking game. So that's what we have coming up. And stay tuned for any other, because we're going to be adding to this channel as we go along. It won't just be the Inside CKP. Moving forward, hopefully we can get some of Kacey's ideas on the channel. I like the drunk history one. Maybe we'll get the feral ladies of CKP going. You never know. Everything's in flux right now. It's a brand new channel, so we're coming up with new ideas all the time. So stay tuned for that. And Kacey, before we leave,
comment if you have ideas.
Oh yes, please.
Sorry,
do.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but yeah, comment and let us know if there's something you want to see.
And like I said before, go to Chris Kennedy publishing.com for any of your sci-fi, fantasy, basically any of your book needs. Support your publishers on their Patreons. Support your authors on their Patreons. For their newsletters. Of course, you can find all the books on Amazon, or you can also just search Chris Kennedy Publishing and go see Kacey on her website. She also has her Facebook. You can just search Kacey Ezell author. Do you use your Instagram?
I do. Mm-hmm.
You'll find her on Instagram, Twitter.
Yep.
And of course, go look at, I think, 50 plus titles on Amazon under Kacey. So go find her there. And of course, her YouTube channel. And that seems to be going pretty good. I catch videos when I can. And I go in and I mess with Kacey as she's doing a live show. And if you ever hear her talking about producer Jeremy, that's this guy.
That's you.
Yeah, that's me. So go check that out. And with that, Kacey, thank you very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I know you're very busy. And we'll probably see you again as Valkyries comes out. And well, basically anytime you want to come on the show, just holler. You have an end. So,
I will. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And so with that, I bid you all adieu. Thank you very much for joining us, and join us next week. Bye.
Bye.